I knew I wanted to do something rediscovering the joy of reckless abandon that you had at 17 years old, where any of us that picked up a guitar and played just because of the sheer excitement of doing it, you were fearless, you know. But love has to be approached in a fearless manner, right? Well, we're in it now. We're in it now, boys.
If I had a waterfall, we wouldn't wonder, not at all, how much fun each day was gonna be. If I had a mountaintop, I know we would never stop, climbing way high up to look and see. If I had a jellyfish, bet you we would never miss a single peanut butter kiss or squeeze. If I had a waterfall, it might not make no sense at all. That won't matter much to you and me. Babies get born even in a war. I guess just to show us what living is for. And my heart still believes that love for what we need can be enough. If we'll just stop keeping score. If I had a big giraffe, tried to dance and made us laugh, every smile and giggle would be free.
He was a game changer at a time when the country format needed it, but the only way he could get through there, get a path to there, was through Los Angeles, because he needed to be a bit of a rebel.
Power and the force that he has, coming from honky-tonks up through modern day. There's a lot of points where country and rock and roll intersect, you know. He's just himself. He's not really anything else.
An amazing, iconic artist, just a classic.
And that voice is just insanely unique. You live to have an artist on your label who, if he's a guitarist like Mark Knopfler, can play one note, you know who he is. Dwight Yoakam can sing one note, and you know who the heck it is.
I've been trying for so long, and this trying just goes on.
There really isn't anybody else like him, because he's kind of like a rock and roll redneck. He really isn't really a country guy, and he's not really a rock guy.
He's always come from a place of originality, drawing on references that weren't always country.
And they have a bunch of odd names for it. Neo, alt, classic.
It doesn't sound like the Jayhawks or any of the other fantastic artists that have done it.
Sort of rockabilly, Bakersfield.
He calls himself a little bit of cowpunk, especially this record more.
As an artist, he's really doing something different and staying true to just exactly how he feels his next record should be.
No, he's just a classic, so, you know, it doesn't really matter what else is going on. He's just, you know, his own thing.
When I began this record, I said some of this is that youthful exuberance, hopefully, a certain reckless abandon. They said, it sounds like a 17-year-old wrote that. I said, wow, if I'm lucky, maybe I can go back to what that was, that moment.
Take hold of my hand, and I'll do what I can to make everything right.
I used to say that I was born in Kentucky, raised in Ohio, but I grew up in California because this is really where I became an adult. I moved here, I was 20 years old, came out west and made my way on my own. In the first couple of years, I was doing what I used to call hard country, and what I broke with. But I was playing in the valley in the clubs, the hillbilly nightclubs around the San Fernando Valley. I got fired a lot because I wouldn't do the contemporary covers of the day. And I did some of the first demos that I ever did at United Western Studios. After I'd get off work driving air freight, there was an engineer there named Gordon Shryock, who was a staff engineer. He was from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he had spec time in the evenings, and Gordon decided I was someone worth spending his spec time at the studio on. It took a few years, but I finally got the chance to make my music my way on my own terms.
I feel what is distinctive about Dwight, if I was to just come up with one word and one aspect of it, is his historical knowledge of music, of all kinds of style.
Just sitting there and having the conversation is the best part of hanging out with Dwight because he's just such a charismatic guy, and he always has a story.
It's not even an encyclopedic knowledge because he has a whole different insight because of his ability to understand it artistically and understand the creative process and understand from all the different angles.
Those same players that were playing on Monkees records were also playing on Mr. Tambourine Man for the Byrds. Chris Hillman of the Byrds. Chris Hillman had been a bluegrass musician, and he then brought Graham Parsons into the Byrds.
He really has a really deep knowledge of the historical styles and bands and music that allows him to create things that are fresh, things that sound familiar yet are not exactly a rehash of something else.
Tell us about listening to tracks in the Corvette.
The role of the Corvette on this record is where the music's played very loud.
And it's very loud.
Ear-splittingly loud.
It's pretty intense.
First time I met him, he said, "Let me take you to the Corvette and let me play some of my demos."
At a deafening volume.
It was so loud, I couldn't hear myself think.
2 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
I'm honored I've been in the Corvette.
You know, fun to listen to a song with him sitting right there next to you, so.
It's a very interesting experience. I think later we're all going to have a listening party in the Corvette. We're going to all pile in and just crank it up.
Yeah, it was really loud, but it was fun because of his playing. When you heard that stuff, it was just the stuff that I love.
He was still able to sing the harmonies over the track.
Thick smoke and loud music.
louder than the sound system still. So I have to give him credit for that.
During that 9 months, I was playing the rough tracks, the mixes and everything in the car, because that's the final resting place for the voting. That's the precinct that cast the deciding ballot.
It was definitely our way to finalize things.
Most musicians that I know have one spot where they listen to music all the time.
That's kind of his mark of like, all right, if it sounds good in there, then then it's working. It sounds good.
You know, that's a normal function.
It makes sense to me to go in that environment, listen to what you're doing, and because it gives you a sense of where it stands with everything else you're listening to. It's an amazing reference point.
When you listen to something so much, you have to have some kind of a ground zero where you know what it's going to sound like, and it always sounds the same.
But it's always fun to go in there because it always does sound great. But he's able to go, yeah, it sounds great, but it needs more this, less that, because he's been living in that environment.
This was packed actually with more CDs than this. These are each individual roughs at given times or mixes that I kept going to my car and listening to.
Dwight would call and see if I could meet him in his car in front of Warner Brothers.
And we'd sit there with that Chevy engine running, just belching heat on us, listening to the tunes of the day.
So that's how we did it, in the car in front of Warner's. He played stuff and I'd go, that's great. Or, you know, maybe you should add this, or it could use this kind of color.
And he would give me suggestions and I would run things by him and let him hear the latest track. In fact, the first time I showed up at Chris Lord Alge's, I think I had twice this many. I probably had 30 CDs.
And he just spreads all these CDs out. And it was like a hoarder.
And thanks to Lenny, thanks to Chris, this has narrowed itself down to this. And this, you see, fits really nicely in this little zip leather pouch. In fact, it just lays real nice and flat, smooth.
It was fun to hear what he did and how he took the songs that he had talked about and made it into what's on this record.
The place that the album started was with Beck in his studio. One thing specifically together called A Heart Like Mine that was, to my ear, the first time I did something that you could call cowpunk. Cowpunk was a term in the early 80s that was applied to the scene that was going on around the clubs in LA.
The first time we got together, he just got up and started playing songs for me on his acoustic guitar and singing to the rafters.
He started turning on mics and you know, setting up the track. I said, what are you doing? Well, we just, it's a scratch, right? He goes, no, we just record it. I said, no, but I'm not going to play it. Probably it'll be, he said, why not? You know, I was like, well, I don't know, it doesn't sound good enough. And he said to me later, he said, look, we've gotten guys to come in and maybe play note for note more perfectly. Yeah, but it won't sound like this.
I think I tried to encourage him to just let it have his personality in it and just be what it is.
And I said, yeah, you're right. It won't sound like this. And so let's make this be the sound. And we did. We tracked the record. Even though, you know, something is intellectually better, sonically maybe more polished, if you will, sometimes it's better to let it be, as Paul McCartney said all those years ago.
I love that we recorded live. That's really important in making records that the band plays together.
Because to make the kind of record that we made, you really still need to be in a real live room.
He's got ideas and like things that he wants to hear, like kind of a vibe or a style or something that he's kind of going for.
Dwight would come in and start singing it and start playing it and say, this is what we want, and we'd start hashing out different ideas and different feels and just kind of find where the song needed to go.
A lot of times he would just come in and play it on an acoustic guitar. He would just play it for us and we would figure it out. Because I feel like a lot of the time it wasn't set. The arrangement wasn't decided before we got to the studio.
What's the storyline of the song? I have no idea. What's the concept of the song? Song's going to tell me. And that's the way I approach the album. The album is really going to convey what each musical moment that I had in creating it decides to convey.
He kind of has a big picture idea of what he wants, but a lot of the tracks on this record have just kind of like developed and morphed and changed a lot from where we would kind of bang him out at a sound check.
He's great at coming in with a really strong, awesome, natural instinct of what the song should do, and then willing to see the possibilities of it going somewhere else.
The music we made on any given day in this room or the other studios, I want to try to remain as close to intact to the emotional excitement that the band and I had and the engineers on the day we created the track in a studio.
I said, you know, I was potting down and up. I was turning down while you were singing, and then I turn up for the leads, and then I come back down. And he said, oh, you were? I said, yeah. And he said, oh, don't do that. And then he says, I'll never forget these, don't be tasteful. Why on earth would you be tasteful? And I just thought, oh, that's the greatest thing anyone's ever said to me. And that is, I think that has been sort of that's been the umbrella statement for this whole experience so far, is don't worry about being tasteful. We'll worry about that later. Just play out, be big.
And right off the bat, it gave it its own color and its own, its own story and its own identity.
One of the coolest things was when we were all in the same room and the energy of everybody just all with the same direction coming together, and it's a couple of real magical tracks.
Waterfall, it has some deep moments in it that I really want to appreciate what he's saying in it, but from a sonic standpoint, besides his beautiful singing, I thought he nailed it. He nailed it.
We've been kind of going over it a few times, just trying to find the right groove and how we were going to do this, and he was playing a bunch of different things, trying different guitars. We were trying a bunch of different grooves, and I just started kind of playing this bloom, bloom, just kind of weird, very different, not country bass line at all. Kind of a two-note, like a double stop thing on the bass, and that ended up being like drums and bass for a lot of the song. Like the whole first part of the song is just that. And
so on the verses, we cover the drums with towels, sort of, and it's ripping off the Beatles on Abbey Road.
Babies get born even in a war.
And that was just one of those kind of magical, inspired moments. Everybody kind of filled in, and it just turned out to be really interesting.
And my heart still believes that love for what we need can be enough. If we'll just stop keeping score. If I had a big giraffe, tried to dance and made us laugh, every smile and giggle would be free.
The thing that really stood out to me more than anything else was the confidence. When you hear the record, you feel like somebody's in total command of that record, and it's him.
But there's a joyfulness in this. This is a hopeful record. I think it's a perfect record for the time he is at in his life.
You know, like when you first discover rock music and you're in the garage with your friends playing, is kind of what it makes me think of.
It's much more about feel. It's much more about about emotion.
And the thrill of playing music that makes people dance and spin and girls happy and smile and cheer and giggle, that's the best.
This may be as good as any record he ever made.
Is it country? I don't know if it's country, but it's Dwight, and it's cool.
I hope they like it. I hope anybody that hears it likes it, enjoys it, and it makes the moments, the 3 minutes they're listening to, is 3 minutes that's brighter or happier in their day.
Three pairs of glasses, three pairs of shades, three pairs of other things, all there in space. Three pairs of shoeless feet, three mindless thoughts, three pairs of wishes for all that you want. That means where you are is where you at. When your head is cold, to put on a hat. If you can't recall, just remember that. To wear three pairs of shades, three pairs of glasses, three pairs of shades.
Just remember, don't forget to, woo! Boys, let's go. Oh man, have you had enough?
In space.